A Letter to Sadegh HEDAYAT. Narrator and author, Sound of Liberty. Audio production, AVAYeBUF.
AVAYeBUF.com.
First of all, let's begin with who Sadegh HEDAYAT was. Sadegh HEDAYAT was an Iranian author who was famous for his philosophical literary books. After the Islamic Revolution in 1979, his books went forbidden and couldn't be found. What he was trying to achieve was a free country. He was a critic of social superstition and had tried to fight and deconstruct such baseless stories that has made people of Iran slaves of ridiculous ideas. In this writing, his name is a model for many of those brave authors that have been trying to make Iran a free country and better place for everyone in the world. You can read more about him on Wikipedia. English version of this writing has some differences from the Persian one. Author. A Letter to Sadegh HEDAYAT. Dear Sadegh, you're not here to see that your books have destroyed the lineage of mullahs and mullahism. It is a pity that you're not here to see that you have become a brave legend for us. If you were here to see how your name sent shivers down the body of mullah and IRGC troops are those who protect the Islamic regime in Iran, you might have been very proud of yourself. When I go to a bookstore, I feel empty in the absence of you on the bookstore shelves. But fortunately, you're always there and you can be seen and whispered in your books. You can be revived by touching the pages of your books. I can close my eyes and imagine you while writing. It can be imagined when you tell us a story. You were an earthquake that would have saved our Iran if it could have created a tsunami. You were left alone and drowned in the stupidity of this congregation. You cannot be seen or heard. Your face and many like you cannot be painted on the walls, painted with anger born from oppression. You are one of the brave generals of Qadisiyah. Qadisiyah was a battle in which Sassanid army lost in front of the Muslim Arab army, and Muslims massacred Iranian people after the battle. We as Iranian ex-Muslims believe that Iran hasn't lost this battle till we leave. And how many mullah necks have been cut by your sword? It is a metaphor. Words are being likened as swords. Our Qadisiyah is not over no matter how much we have lost and will lose, but the path of this battle continues until the freedom of our Iran. You're not there to see, and how good you're not to see, that the nation has not yet been able to understand your words and those of freethinkers. If you were there and you saw that people still change their Islam and put on new clothes to it, you might have gotten very disappointed. But it would have been nice to see how people beat the mullahs. You don't want to see that our freedom-loving generals are being stabbed in the back without going to war. That the heart screams in the chest and words cannot carry the sufferings. In the houses, people are shedding tears, and the ground and ropes are crying with blood. Blood has life, has breath. A spirit is breathed into the human nature. The clouds are not raining. They are just raining blood. You knew that silence is treason, so you never remained silent and took a sharp pen in your hand to defend Iran. Your fortress still stands. If you were here and saw how everyone who tried to crush you was crushed themselves and their names got forgotten. It is as if ink has been poured from your pen on the candle and the candle has been lit. Maybe in your solitude, the only candle was left for you. They say, if you were alive, you could create life. They say you wouldn't have chosen death this time. I love your death book. The book is written about death by Sadegh HEDAYAT himself. Although it is short, it is very meaningful. I wish dictators read it too. I know I can't see you, so I am sending you a carrier pigeon. Maybe I feel the potion with your anger to make my paper bloody. A prophet cannot be someone who has oppressed. The prophet could not be the one to take the sword. The prophet brings wisdom. The prophet brings a seal. The prophet does not take life, but gives life. His honor is not his sword. A prophet's honor is the smile he puts on faces. The pride of Muslim people of Iran is Ali, the same Ali whose honor is a double-edged sword, not plains of flowers and sealed letters. You knew these things and wanted wisdom for Iran, wisdom that has been lost in history. You were right. Why God didn't make it obligatory to read 30 books in the month of Ramadan. Dear Sadegh, why did religion take wisdom from us? How did you feel when you read Kafka's words? It is good that you're not here, because I didn't want to see your tears. I didn't want you to bear so much hatred. We are both grieving, and there are many grieving people with broken hearts, and those who have seen blood. Didn't you see how they sold our Persepolis, which was burned centuries before the Islamic caravan, to others? Mullahs in Iran, like Taliban in Afghanistan, do not care about Iranian history. Above that, they have tried their best to make people forget about their rich history. Mullahs even exchanged Achaemenid's life for money. Many people came to destroy this huge symbol of civilization forever, but they couldn't. But it didn't work. Iraj Mirza's poems didn't affect the poor minds either. Iraj Mirza was a poet who has poems making fun of ridiculous things mullahs do and say. He has been so brave to walk in this path. You can also read about him on Wikipedia. How much did it hurt to not being understood? I can understand that. How can I not ask myself whether what I have made of this world for myself is true or not? This question is being asked from Muslims. One makes a sharp sword and cuts humanity's neck, and one's pen screams for humanity. One sends millions of people to Gulag and the other frees the slaves. Gulag are forced labor. Did you know, dear Sadegh, that there were beating hearts inside of the SS uniforms? Nazi police agents. This part is mostly mentioned in relation with the book Man in Search of Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. Do you believe that it is possible to take life from humans? I still cannot figure out being a hangman, executioner. Even from behind the windows and doors, it is as if you turn off your heart beating in your chest. What would you do if you were given 3 chances to make your dreams come true? Maybe I wanted trees and flowers to grow from the blood of the innocent. Maybe I wanted no ropes and guillotines, to remain on the ground, and maybe no prison walls. How can fire burn books that are a result of centuries of hard work? Maybe the fire should cool down on the books. If we were friends, I could introduce Dr. Ansari's books to you. Maybe we read the Shahnameh, the book written by Abul Qasim Ferdowsi, the very well-known Iranian poet, who is very famous for his epic historical poems, and maybe Cyrus's biography. Cyrus the Great is the founder of Achaemenid's empire. I could introduce Dr. Harari's book to you. Maybe in a free Iran we could go to Cyrus's tomb and sit quietly next to him. Maybe if you were alive right now, you would write a book called The Nation That Lost Its Country. You know that our war is with the darkness. I wish you would send the sun to give us a hand. We went to visit Cyrus. You were missed. You didn't see how a man who had a pure thought scared the blind sorcerers of the 21st century. How to train such a person? How can you build a country that educates such people? My father wanted to talk to him, so I told him to write a letter to him. May he does that. One wished to rest in the soil of Iran to become a part of this soil, and the other sold his soil to his executioners. It is written that Cyrus the Great has asked his soldiers to bury his body in the soil of Iran so that he will be a part of this soil. Our last bastion, which is pen, should become our first bastion. When I look around, I see that you are truly alone in this war, and people like you are probably lost in history. People committed mass suicide in 1979, the time that Islamic Revolution occurred in Iran, and it seems like we have been living in a nightmare. You know that evil is rooted in human stupidity, and bloodshed dictatorship is evil itself. Ominous is when the tree does not grow and what our sows do not bear fruit. It must have been difficult for you to write all these books, so the only thing that I can say is to say well done and thank you. Nowruz this year, 1402, was bloody. We sat down at a table with many bitter memories, and it was as if we had passed another battle of Qadisiyah, and I wish it would be the last battle of Qadisiyah, and the phoenix of freedom would rise from this bloody soil. How good that your name was engraved on the mirror of your words and books instead of being placed on your tombstone. It must have been very difficult for you to see how Nika Shakarami, one of the protesters that got killed by the Iranian regime at 2022, and thousands of others like her, were raped and executed. Do you believe, honestly, do you believe that they, Islamic Republic troops and mullahs, believe that if they don't rape a girl who is an unbeliever, disbeliever or kafir, before her execution, she will not go to hell? Do you believe such disgusting horror? How can a person be so stupid to believe such a special thing and even go further and act upon it? It is shameful and disgraceful. If Nietzsche saw and heard such things, wouldn't he go insane? Do you believe that a book whose only meaning of its verses and its entire interpretation is nothing but murder and looting can be considered holy and put on one's head to save the world? The Quran is being the target. They, Muslims and Islamists, consider it a miracle. You can't even laugh at this joke. Maybe you should cry. A mother will come to say, "Oh, bloodthirsty, take my child's life, so that the God will be happy and pleased." What can be said honestly? What really? One bends and straightens 17 times during the day to worship God, and in that he gives the most profane curses to all unbelievers. What will happen? You tell me, dear. What is the benefit of this work? Hasn't he ever asked himself, in the same bending and straightening, why didn't God send mercy to the infidels to make them believers with the seal of love? Didn't he? Is it finally possible? He didn't ask himself why God didn't ask Muslims to go and help the infidels and promise them God's love and mercy during the Muharram. And why should you machete yourself? It is an insane act in which Shia Muslims cut their heads with a sharp blade in order to show that they are sad for Hussein, the third Imam of their sect. Didn't he ask himself why and how he curses Yazid, when if he himself had been in his place and era, may have done more sinister things than him? Why shouldn't he pray that the world will be filled with kindness, and instead of crying, he should plant some trees and hold the hands of the poor? The vampires of history have been eating our blood for centuries and still haven't had enough of sucking our blood. It takes a lot of courage to read the history out loud so that maybe some people who are not yet dead will hear it. It takes twice as much courage to have glue on your mouth and a sword on the back of your neck, but still draw a pen, the clan of the blasphemer, into a pile of ashes and separate the head from the body of the executioner. Maybe if we were friends, I could play the famous song by Shervin Hajipur. Maybe you would cry, and maybe you would stay silent, or maybe you would write it differently. I wish you the most beautiful wishes, if there is another world. I wish the same for all of Iran and the people of the world. I wish that if it was another world, you would give me your words and help me in writing my book. The clouds have cried so much for us, as if their eyes have become dry and waterless. You should find a well and put your head in it and cry. Did you really want me to bring you flowers? Maybe one day I came to your grave and remembered my dear friend. Mullah Shah cut their necks. The men were hanged by Mullah Shah. Mullah Shah has cut off their breaths and bodies torn. They didn't know that the foolish nation is the cup of the blood in the hands of Mullah Shah. You lived the sentence of Jean-Paul Sartre, who says that hell is these people. I would like to be a psychiatrist and you would come to me and I would live your life through your experiences and feelings. I would probably ask you how you shaped your feelings and how you liked to talk to them. Did you have nightmares? Your brain probably showed your anger in your sleep. Many lives can be lived with psychotherapy. Each of them is a novel for itself, some in color and some in black and white. If you were alive and we sitting next to each other, could I narrate you a part of my life? Maybe we could hold each other's hands like two warriors and fight for the freedom of humanity. When you were tired, I comforted you, and if I lost myself, you stood by my side and put your hand on my shoulder. Maybe I would play the song Ruz Hay Roshan by Hayde for you and we would cry together and engrave the name of this beautiful lady on the wall of our hearts. Hayde was a female singer in Iran who had an angelic voice. In your opinion, if Da Vinci was alive and living in Iran, what paintings would he draw today? People probably called him crazy. How many times should I see the novel The Last Day of a Death Row by Victor Hugo in front of my eyes? I cannot describe to you the depth of the feeling that Victor Hugo drew for us. My heart ached even when I heard the summary. You tell me honestly. Please tell me how to kill a human being. I wish I asked you. If you were here today, what book would you like to read? Whose concert would you like to go and whose grave would you like to see again? Maybe you would go to the Louvre Museum and spend hours in the London Library. Maybe you sat down and read the book Man in Search of Meaning by Dr. Frankl. Maybe the scary ghosts are afraid of books and they are angry with them and burn the soul of the book. You could see the woman who was writing and how she was melting. It was a painting, but in the same painting, the woman, as she wrote, slowly became small pigeons and started flying from there. I remember that man who emptied his treasure box so that he could put his books in it. Today I was reading a book about the betrayals of the mullahs to the constitutional revolution in Iran. Sometimes I say to myself that all this stupidity and crime can only be done by a handful of people, because you cannot see this level of stupidity and ignorance in any other being in the world. Perhaps just as man is the smartest creature in this world, he is also the stupidest. How would you express this contradiction? You were right. Islam turned a wretched man into an emperor, and a backward and barbaric nation into a civilization, and replaced us with a handful of backward people. We didn't really have the option of burying our daughters alive. We had greatness and civilization, but Islam ruined it all. You are lucky that you weren't there and did not see ISIS. You're lucky that you didn't see how the Taliban tore women to pieces. You know, talking to the dead is easier than talking to the living. Many think you're crazy. Many think that you are a pervert. Some scare you from the hellfire of the gods. Some people are looking for their profit in you. There are ones that do not listen at all. Sometimes they whisper the words of their God to you and tell you to trust. Someone taps you on the shoulder and says it's your own fault for thinking too much. Maybe I should come quietly and sit at the grave of a friend and draw with my hand on the soil of that grave. There will be no one to tell you say this or do not say that. I have wished very much that I would never leave and see such suffering and death. How can such a person be killed and butchered for a limited life? Sometimes I used to say that I wish a beautiful angel would come up from the earth and take my life and destroy me. Anger and pain would arise and they turned to the ink of the pen, but there was no breath to write. Sometimes it was not possible to paint the wounds. Sometimes the brush brings little color and the painter the design. Sometimes the painter who cried his tears would ruin the designs. Even the surgeons didn't reach the hearts with their sutures. Sometimes the soil was cold and dark, and the trees dried up at the birth of May. I didn't tell you about Tomaj. You know, many people will say that it is not that much of a glorious thing to bring about someone who is so famous, but his words and poems have revealed many things. I have rarely seen so much courage in my life. You know that he was and still is a person of his own kind. Have you ever noticed that when someone's picture is painted on the wall of history, the closer you look, there are many people who are imprinted on his face? One dances, one hugs, one was executed in silence, one has executed himself. They hug each other and cry together. His picture is also left on the wall of history. It is a pity that the hands of the painter of history are proud of his conscience, because of all who he read or not read cannot appear in his face. My pen also weeps on the paper because my language is imperfect, because it cannot properly portray the suffering. That is why it is necessary for me to depict the feeling with a moment that evokes the feeling. Maybe if someone planted a rose for us in the street, he could bring a smile to the lips of an innocent child. Maybe if it rained and watered the tree that passes over our graves, maybe that tree would put a fruit in the hands of a poor person from the sap of our being. Someone may read our writings and the sun rose on him from behind of the mountains of fear and removed the cold from his being like a mother hugging him. The fact that I have mentioned you is not because I have forgotten the rest of the freethinkers. I want you to forgive everyone who has done you wrong. I do not know. You might say it is stupid. I cannot do justice to friends. Your own words can do it better. For your words, for what you didn't say, you will be executed. You die. You will be rejected. I'm sorry if I offended anyone. Silence is hard. Pains are stored. But it is better to not break a life or a heart. Don't say you do not regret what you didn't say. If a man has freedom and choice, doesn't this include giving himself the right to leave? Earlier, when I was a child, I used to say that suicide is for weak humans. But now, when I think about it, I think we cannot simply comment on whether someone has the right to end his life or not. What did freedom mean to you? In my opinion, there was no need for any other slogan. Their slogan is so powerful that no slogan can create such a terrible earthquake. It is as if a young and brave girl emerges from an old and broken woman and makes this old woman alive and young again. The bridge that mullahs had built for looting seems to be destroyed by this slogan and the heavy belief it brings. Courage waved all over Iran for a while. Fear could be seen in the entire existence of this cruel system. Perhaps after a century of war between Islam and Iran, the light will finally come. What is a more painful scene than the suicide of a child or a girl? Because this country has become a swamp of dead, and there is nothing left to live for. Why should a person leave and see people who ride the latest model of car and the other is looking for a piece of food in the garbage? You have heard so many lies about these things, and you do not know if the beggar who came for a bit of money really needs the money or is a fraud. Humans should know that what they kill is the result of their own actions. You see children, sometimes you wish you never saw them. Perhaps it is the same feeling when you see a tree that has just woken up and wants to bloom and just give leaves, but its new leaves slowly turn yellow and fall on the ground. One is taken from us by the desert swamp, which is not tired of dragging and swallowing humans after a century, and the other by the invisible dragon of poverty. How long has the storyteller been narrating us a scary story? I wish it wasn't all sadness and everything I write isn't about death and sighs and regrets. Let's take the brush of the world's painter from the depths of our being. Let's kill the same world that isn't more beautiful even in our biggest dreams. If you touch the soil, The drought will go away and the trees and flowers will come out of it. Hugs heal wounds forever. When the sun sees the sweat of a laboring man and loses its brightness a little. If the sea saw a child abandoned to itself, it would ride him on the waves and find his loved ones from the wind, and bring him to them like the arms of a kind mother. Love couldn't die with the death either, as letters could be written and tied to the feet of birds. The words brought such love as if the one you love is sitting in front of you. Love knows no boundaries. If you saw the embrace of two lovers who crossed the boundaries of fear, it would no longer be a feeling of hatred and guilt. There is no one who thinks that a hateful God is leaning on the sky and watching death. The kisses became one color and smell. In that world, two men or two women who kiss each other will not be sentenced to death. A breathing person should not be sentenced to death because of a story in a rotten book. The end.
AVAYeBUF.com